Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. My name is Nick Clark. I'm acting as the chair of these hustings that are online. And I'm inviting each of the candidates in turn to tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're standing for election in Preston. And let's begin with Nick Ireland.
Okay, thank you, Nick. So I'm Nick Ireland. I'm your Lib Dem candidate. But why? Because I actually care about Weymouth. 20 years ago, in September 2000, we visited Weymouth and stayed in what was then the Streamside Hotel on Preston Road. The visit was for a dry suit from '03. My wife and I are both scuba divers, but we'd never visited Weymouth before. And by the end of the weekend, we put an offer in on a house, unseen, near Wyke Oliver Road. And by the end of the following week, sold our London home. And that purchase fell through. But we committed to the area, and we ended up moving to Osmondton in February 2001. And so I've now lived and worked here for 20 years. My youngest, he attended Preston Playgroup, and all three children went to St Andrews in Preston, moving from there to local state secondary schools. In May 2017, I was elected to Dorset County Council, and in May 2019, I was elected to the new Unitary Dorset Council, where I'm currently the leader of the opposition with 29 Lib Dem councillors. I care about our environment, and I've been striving to reduce my own carbon footprint for the last 11 years. At the first meeting of the new Dorset Council, I successfully proposed that we recognise climate change is real and declare a climate emergency. But what can I bring to Weymouth Town Council and specifically to Preston if elected? As a member of Planning Committee, I've opposed the overdevelopment of sites and voted against applications which diminish green space in places such as Bowleys Coveway and Roman Road in Radipole, for example. I've opposed extending the opening dates of caravan parks and the creeping extensions of such sites. I've spent more hours than I care to recollect trying to maintain bus services. But I have a proven track record in being effective in representing those who elected me. When we went to Unitary in 2019, one huge concern for residents of Weymouth was the loss of the Borough Council, with a fear of being ruled from South Walks House. And by and large, those fears have been upheld, with Dorset Council bypassing local representatives to announce without consultation things such as extending the car parking period from 6 PM to 8 PM, installing railings and customer house key, for example. And I have monthly meetings with the Chief Executive of Dorset Council, Matt Prosser. I have meetings with the leader of the council monthly and his executive directors. And I have the influence that this brings. Weymouth Town Council needs that influence, and I am the candidate in front of you and give you it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'm going to turn now to John and invite him to speak to the same question, telling us about himself and why he's standing for election.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Well, I've lived in Dorset for most of my life and in Preston itself for the last 40 years. So I guess that's almost makes me a local. My background is in insurance and finance, but I was made redundant a good few years ago now. And funnily enough, one of the best jobs I've had recently was working for Sea Life. And I was delivering fish all over Europe. So that was a very interesting job. But I've always taken a very close interest in what's happening in our town and how the council, particularly when it was Weymouth and Portland Borough Council, affected changes, the proposed changes that have happened over the years. And two particular incidences that have happened, I guess, have caused me more than any other to want to be involved in the council. The first one being the number of good family homes that have been knocked down along the Preston Road and be replaced by flats. I'm sure everyone who lives in the area has seen it happen time and time again. And, you know, I'm not against flats. I'm really not against it, but it seems ludicrous that good properties can be knocked down to be replaced by flats. Flats are great in the right place. The other thing that's really got my goat over the last few years is what's been happening down by the pavilion and the risk that it could actually be knocked down. Quite a few years ago now, locals will remember Howard Holdings were the company involved in trying to actually completely change the area down there. Then more recently, it's been also the Weymouth and Portland Borough Council trying to just redevelop the area. Well, all these things have made me realise that, you know, something more important needs to be done. And the one thing that every council meeting I attended made me realise that larger groups push through things just because they were the larger group. So independence is the way. There's no place for party politics locally.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. And we now turn to Stuart, who has the opportunity to address that same question. Over to you, Stuart.
Thank you. Well, thanks, first of all, for the opportunity to do this and for all those who have been involved and put it together. My name is Stuart Sharkey. I'm the Labour candidate for the Preston ward. I moved to Weymouth back in 1990, and I've lived in Wyke Oliver Road, Preston, since 1994. By qualification, I'm a chartered accountant, and I've held a number of senior management roles. For the last 16 years of my paid career, I was the finance director and deputy MD of Ultra Electronics, who are based on the Granby Industrial Estate. I was on a good pension scheme, so I took the opportunity to take early retirement from full-time employment to do other things, basically. And one of the things that we've done together with my wife is that we've managed various development projects in Cambodia for a Christian charity. And then in 2009, we created a charity to help support some of the specific needs that we found on our trips to Cambodia in particular. And we currently sponsor, through the help of various donors, 29 children in Cambodia, their education. Back in the UK, I've been the station manager for a full-time community radio station, as well as the license holder and station manager for a pop-up radio station supporting the New Wine summer gatherings. I'm a committed Christian, and I'm currently a lay worship leader within the Watercombe benefice. Since retiring, we've travelled extensively, particularly to Southeast Asia, and that has highlighted the importance of things like education, supportive local communities, affordable housing, quality employment opportunities, as well as the need to look after the environment and our young people. And it's these same issues that I believe will prove incredibly relevant locally as we come out of COVID-19.
Thank you, Stuart. We're going to turn to one of the first questions that has come in from the wider public, and I'm going to ask John to address it first of all, with 90 seconds available. This is the question. Every campaigning councillor always promises to do lots of ward work, but is then never seen until the next election. Will you be different, and how? Over to John.
Okay, thanks, Nick. Well, it's very easy, isn't it, to say, yes, of course I'll be different. All I can say is that in going around leafleting and also just discussing things with local people, several people have said, you know, you're the first person that I've seen around here to actually sit and talk to people and listen to what we say. All I can say is that I know an awful lot of people in the Preston area, and I'm sure therefore they know me. And I have a couple of things that have happened actually just by going round, just talking to people. I've actually had contact with the local authority on 3 matters. One was a grid that was actually, or a manhole cover that was rattling outside the co-op. I've been in contact with the council and they've actually sent someone along. That's actually been repaired. Not completely repaired yet, but it's been attended to. Another one was in Morecambe Drive. Again, just by talking to people, there's a drain there that has been left for over 12 months. And the water seeps out of that and down to another drain, which obviously makes the water very smelly, and the local people aren't very happy about it. So things like that, you know, I've actually done something even already. Regardless of whether I'm a councillor or not, I take quite a lot of pride in our area. Litter is something that drives me mad. I'm sure it does for most people. And I like to feel that, you know, I will, even if I don't get elected, still do something about our area. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Again, the same question. Over to you, Stuart.
Well, I think it's very true, actually. I was only thinking yesterday that I've lived in this area since 1994, and I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a councillor. I got close to it once. I left a message on Brian Ellis's phone, but he never phoned me back. So I think it's a fair comment. One of my aims is to do what local people want. And in order to do that, as John has already said, we need to dialogue with them. We need to talk to them. And I think there's means we can do that. We could do something on social media. We can use the register, and also we can knock on doors. And so I've got no basic hidden agenda that I want to do this, that, and the other. I want to make a difference, and I want that difference to be what people want, not what I want, what they want. Okay.
Thank you very much, Stuart. You have plenty more time there, but fine. Okay. And over to you, Nick. You need to unmute yourself, I think.
I was trying to follow the rules, keep muted. Yeah, so obviously I am a councillor, so I do know what it takes to be a successful councillor. And I got elected in 2017 with a majority of 18 votes. When I got re-elected on a smaller ward, I have a majority of over 400. And anybody who's I represent now would be able to tell you that they get leaflets from me at least once or twice a year. They see us knocking on the doors. And that's what it takes to be a successful councillor, because if you don't listen to your residents, if you're not available, if you don't answer your emails, if you don't answer your phone, I just took a phone call earlier this morning from a constituent, they won't vote for you again. You need to be seem to be doing what they want you to do. And that's the only way to get elected. And I've met loads of people, similar to John and Stuart, knocking on doors, some of them I haven't seen since my kids were at school in Preston. Some of them I know more recently through triathlon and things like that. And they all have the same issues that I have with Preston, such as overdevelopment, building flats. I voted against the conversion of a house to flats on Preston Road a year or so ago. And if you don't talk to your constituents, they won't vote for you again. I know that for a fact. And so I know what it takes. I have a track record. And as a Lib Dem, I also have the advantage of the fact we have an organisation behind us that gives us the opportunity to put leaflets out, that gives us the opportunity to use social media more effectively. We basically pay into a fund, and as part of a councillor's allowance, we use that to keep in touch with our constituents, and that's what I will do. That's what I've always done.
Many thanks. Thank you for those answers. We're going to move on to the next question, which I'll read out now. Weymouth Town Council has looked at commercial activities in order to generate income and has kept the precept to 0% raise for 2 years. Do you believe the decision to operate beach cafes is a good idea? And do you have any other ideas to generate income? And just changing the order, we'll start with Stuart.
Oh, okay. I do believe that the idea to operate beach cafes is a good idea. It's a community thing as well. It brings people together. And one of the things that I'll be looking at, I think the council have been successful in getting some grants. I believe there's been a grant recently awarded for Radipole Gardens. And it would be good to look at that again and see if there are any other opportunities that we can apply for grants. And I've got obviously quite a lot of experience in putting bids in, and I would be more than happy to work with the relevant people on the town council to look at those sort of areas. So that's what I see as possible areas that we can generate extra income. There's no doubt that seaside towns are having a really difficult time. The last few days I've been down in Cornwall and it's pretty much the same there. Lots of closed shops and things like that. And Weymouth is no different. And we need to be looking at different ways of raising income without putting it on the local residents. So I will use all my experience that I have in the financial area to endeavour to do that.
Thank you, Stuart. I turn the question now to Nick, if you'd like to contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, so the way Weymouth Town Council has operated the last 2 years makes me proud to be a Liberal. We lead the council, but in a cooperative way. And the guy in charge of finance, David Gray, he has a background in business at a high level. And the numbers out there just prove how successful he's been. 0% for the last 2 years. We hope 0% next year, the current financial year. And obviously, when we went to unitary, we lost one of the major incomes for Weymouth and Portland Borough Council, which was parking. It's no surprise that Dorset Council took it. It generates a huge amount of money for them. If you look at the income they generate, Weymouth is one of the biggest areas. Other councils such as Swanage have their own car parks. We don't have that. We have the beach. We have parks and gardens. And to be honest, we don't have much more. So we have to leverage our assets to the maximum we can. So the decision on the beach cafes, I think, was a good one. We're now running cafes both ends of the beach. There are economies associated with that. We need to be generating income from our parks and gardens. I believe there's programs to sell plants now to residents and to commercial enterprises. So the Weymouth Town Council is looking at all the assets it has. It doesn't have a huge amount anymore, but what it has, they are using to generate income, and we have to. And if we need to keep our council tax down, and unfortunately we can't stop Dorset Council raising them, that's what we have to do.
Thank you, Nick. And over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you. It's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, when it happened, the beach cafe, especially Anti-Vise, I was obviously very annoyed. You know, like a lot of local people, it seemed rather strange that it was taken over by the council, because I guess most people who live in Preston and live in Weymouth specifically, you know, look at things that the council have run in the past and they haven't really got a good track record. However, I wasn't au fait with what was being negotiated at the time. The one thing I think that they did wrong was the way it was handled. I think a lot clearer explanation could have been given to the public as to why it was done, how it was done, and other ways in which possibly, you know, it could have been handled with the previous tenant. Now, we do obviously need income locally, especially seaside towns, but I'm aware the council had a fund of 56 million to generate seaside towns recently, and yet we managed to spend 40,000 on it on railings, or scaffolding as it's being called. Now, it's things like that which I feel, you know, we do need to be far more careful and far more, you know, prepared to look at different ideas. Certainly things that are coming from central government as grants, we need to look at and definitely use them in a much more sensible, wise and productive manner.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John. Turning to our next question, which revolves around communication. This is the question which Nick will answer first of all. As a Weymouth Town Council candidate, how do you think you can help improve the communication and cooperation with Dorset Council, with initiatives that Dorset Council carry out in our town? It seems that WDTC, the Town Council, is often left out when things are happening in the town.
Thank you, Nick. So I've alluded to this already in my introduction. So as an existing Dorset councillor, and particularly as the leader of the Lib Dem group, I have the ear of both the chief exec and his SLT and the leader of the council. So John's just mentioned the 40 odd thousand pounds spent on scaffolding. So that was an initiative, if that's the right word, that Dorset Council took upon itself to impose on the residents of Weymouth without any consultation at all. They didn't speak to the Weymouth Town Council members. They didn't speak to those members of Dorset Council who represent across party, Weymouth, people like Kate Weller, Claire Sutton. They weren't consulted, let alone the Lib Dems, and neither was I. And I raised this with the chief exec a couple of weeks ago, and it wasn't the first time. The car parking was another issue, and he acknowledged the fact that they screwed it up. Basically, they didn't communicate, they didn't consult. The car parking, they tried to extend car parking from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m, which in my view would have killed the early evening economy. And that was announced yet again without consultation, because they do things under operational reasons. They say because councils have responsibility, it's not a political decision. It is a political decision to impose things like that on our residents. And we as Lib Dems, because we're the big opposition group, we run scrutiny, and we managed to get Dorset Council to change that. So they actually came back and took out 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. They still imposed Sunday parking. Weymouth already had it, but other places didn't. And we have an influence, and I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Turning this question to you, John, please.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you've got Nick Ireland, that is, obviously, as a county, not county anymore, Dorset councillor, and yet he was not aware of some of the things that are going on. It does concern me greatly, and one of the things that I've pledged to do is to have a much better closer working relationship with Dorset Council. I feel that, and I'm sure, well, it's certainly things I've been, advised on as I've been going around talking to the public. They do feel that the Weymouth Town Council, it's in its infancy. It's only 2 years old as such. And, we need to make sure that it's got more teeth. We need to be sure that Dorset Council are listening to what we say. We are here meant to be representing Weymouth as a town. Okay, I'll be representing hopefully Preston, or at least one of the candidates today will be, and I'm sure they're prepared to say their piece. But we need to do it as a town council. We need to have a much better, closer working relationship with the town council. Talking about the scaffolding again, I see 2 letters in the Echo today from Kate Wheeler and I think it was David Harris. The introduction, the letter that was sent by the PM for West Dorset was ridiculous. I mean, he didn't get his facts right for one thing, and why he was involved, I just do not know. We need to have a much better working relationship.
Thank you, John. And Stuart, your chance to respond to that question.
Well, I think we're all of the same mind. I mean, the railings has just proved that the relationship between Dorset Council and Weymouth Town Council is not good. And quite how they were able to put railings up without the Town Council even knowing they were going to be put up is a farce. And as John has just said, we need to build those relationships. And it's a case of sitting down with them eyeball to eyeball and sorting it out. We represent Weymouth and Portland, 25% of the population. It's crazy that all these things are happening and we're not having an input. And the same, of course, will happen to the Dorset Local Plan, which is an amazing document. It sets out a lot of the issues that are really key at the moment, but it's a bit vague on how we're going to meet those demands. So I think that is going to be a real challenge over the next few years, the Dorset Local Plan. And we need to be working closely with Dorset Council on that. Otherwise, the railings is just going to be a little wave. There's a tsunami going to be coming if we don't sort that relationship out.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you. Okay, our next question is related really to the relevance of the town council to the wider Weymouth area. Sometimes, this is how the question reads, sometimes it's easy to forget the town council functions outside of Weymouth Centre and Beach. What relevance is the town council to the people of Preston? And what would you do to raise the profile of our community, its needs and identity on the council and in general? So turning to you, John, first of all, to respond.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I understand the question from the point of view of the Preston as a community, but also people in Preston rely, excuse me, very heavily on Weymouth Town as well. So, most of the questions I've been asked going around do relate more to the town than to Preston. But one of the things in Preston that I do feel is very important, I know there are going to be people who say, oh yes, but yet again, it's a Dorset Council matter, and that is bins. There's been a massive shortage of bins. Bins have been taken away. I mean, I live opposite a play park. There is one bin in the play park and one just outside, which is used more for dog walkers and for the results of the dog walking. 2 bins were taken away from the other side and one by the entrance to the park from the Preston Road. Why? Well, I know why, obviously. It was cost. It's too expensive apparently to have them, too expensive to empty them. Litter is a problem. We, for some strange reason in our country, do have a very bad habit of dropping litter. I don't understand personally why, but nevertheless, it seems to be a problem. Therefore, we've got to have at least the receptacle to actually be able to be used. There's no point in just assuming that people will take it home, because clearly they won't. So we have to have more of a facility for things like that. So I just feel that the timing stopped. So I'm not quite sure how much longer I've got. So.
I think
I do think Preston is very important to me. It's very important to the people I hopefully will represent. And as I said before earlier, two of the things I've already looked at, very concerning to Preston residents, and I will continue to go around, discuss it with locals, and indeed also try and do something about it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Thank you.
I don't think you overran the time too much there. It's okay. Turning to Stuart, let's just wait for the timer to start.
I'd hate to think John got some of my time.
Sorry, Stuart.
Luke, are we starting the timer? Yes. Okay, Stuart.
It is all about profile, isn't it? As members of the town council, we will be the local people on the ground, and it's up to us to try and influence Dorset Council into doing what's needed for Preston. I think COVID had just shown the importance of local. When things are done on a national scale, like test and trace, it's a fiasco. When it's done locally, like the vaccine rollout, which is organised locally, it's so much better. And I think the same applies to local policies as well. By having a good communications with people locally, we can find out what the local issues are, even if they're not under our specific influence directly, we can do something indirectly. I remember a story once about Gordon Brown when he was Prime Minister. He got this enormous petition and he noticed his mother had signed it, and he thought, I better do something about this. And so, petitions actually do work, and it's up to us on the, if we're on the town council, to try and get the people, find out what people want, and influencing, even if it's outside of our area, Dorset Council.
All
right, thank you very much, Stuart, and inviting Nick to respond to that question.
Thank you, Nick. As Stuart said, a lot of it is due to his profile. The more you put yourself out there, the more you get things done, in my experience. And I have a profile. I have a working relationship with possibly a soon to be unemployed Trevor Bevins at the Dorset Echo. But yeah, there is a lot more to Beach than the Weymouth Town Council. Planning is a big issue. There are already any statutory constituencies anymore. We don't have actual permission. We can influence Dorset Council. We have initiatives such as the Weymouth Wildlife Park we're trying to run through Radipole. If you look through Preston, if you walk down the back of Preston Road, it's a wildlife corridor, and we need to maintain these sort of things. And we can through initiatives like neighbourhood plans. So I know the Sutton Points plan is going to be incorporated into a Weymouth wide neighbourhood plan. And as somebody on a planning committee, if you have a neighbourhood plan, that has a huge influence. It can really affect how we develop an area. So I would ensure that Preston's views in a neighbourhood plan for Weymouth Town Council are represented, and the wishes of Preston residents are taken into account. And we can have an influence on environmental things as well. So Weymouth Town Council, we're sticking solar panels on all the roofs, we're selling electricity, they're converting all their vehicles to electric on a rolling basis. We own the vehicles apparently, and they're being replaced as they become unusable, they get replaced with electric vehicles. So there are things we can do outside the beach. There are things we can do outside the town centre, but we also need to affect the town centre through planning as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Nick. Moving on to the next question, to do with the climate emergency at the end of a week where we've had Earth Day as well, so very relevant. Weymouth Town Council has declared a climate and ecological emergency. What does that mean to you? And how do you see the Weymouth Town Council responding to this emergency? And we'll start with Stuart.
I think three of the main assets that we have in Weymouth are the beach, the sea, and the coastline. And these are all affected by the climate and climate change. And we have a duty as individuals, as a town council, as a county council, as a council, to look after these areas. They've been given to us to look after, and we have a responsibility. If calling an emergency is going to help that, I'm all for it. If we do not keep our red flag, the number of people coming to Weymouth will reduce over the years. The beach and the sea and the coastline are key assets, and we have a responsibility to look after that. That's really all I want to say on the subject.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. And I'm going to turn to Nick to respond to that question.
Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned previously, I was the one who proposed Dorset Council adopt a climate proposal. And that's the whole basis of the plan that's been developed over the last 2 years. And it's really, really important. You know, lots of people in Preston live quite high up. If you're living in a house up in Brackendown or top of Bournemouth Avenue, sea levels won't affect you, but it will affect Weymouth Town Council. And so, you won't be able to go shopping in Weymouth Town Council if there are any shops left, that is, if it's under seawater. And it will be, because seawater is rising. I've mentioned in the previous answer, Weymouth Town Council are putting solar panels on the roofs. They're moving their fleet electric. I have 7 kilowatts of solar panels on my roof. I have thermal heating. I have biomass heating, and I've got 2 electric vehicles between my life. So I know what you need to do personally to address the climate change. And what Weymouth can do is only small, but it all makes a difference. And none of us should be saying we can't make a difference, because we most definitely can. And we should be fighting to do everything we possibly can. And Weymouth Town Council, I think, are doing so. And I oppose the incinerator across the water in Portland, because we have a really quality beach, and the beach is a big asset, and we do not want an incinerator across the sea in Portland Harbour throwing out carbon deposits at all. I'm dead opposed to that, and I will be opposing it until we stop it. So Weymouth Town Council, I'm sure, will be opposing that as well, and they're doing as much as they can at the moment, but we can all do more.
Okay, thank you. And over to you, John, on this question.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because obviously, again, most of these things are generated by central government. The one thing that is obvious to everybody, quite simply, is yes, climate is changing. We are in this situation, and we have to do something about it. I think one of the Dorset Council initiatives, and Nick has already mentioned it, regarding the electric vehicles is very good. I mean, to my mind, one of the things that ought to come on stream for us in all areas is electric public transport, because that can be simply a good way for others to follow. It's quite a big ask for a lot of people, and I know people I've spoken to in the last few weeks have been very concerned. Certain targets are set. We have to have our gas boilers taken out. We have to have, do away with our petrol and diesel cars, etc. So it is quite a concern, and people are talking about it. Yes, it's something we need to address. Of course it is. And one thing that I feel as a town council and a Dorset council, keep calling it county, sorry, bad habits. And I just feel that what we need to do is to get into cross-party discussion, because as an independent, clearly we're not going to have all independents in Weymouth Town Council in the next few years, unfortunately. So we need to have cross-party discussion, and we don't need to be bogged down by one party saying it's not a good idea, another party saying it is a good idea. We need to look at all options, and everything should be on the table. And one thing definitely is that all new builds could be built with solar panels and better insulation. And that would be very easy and simple to make sure it happens.
Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Sorry, John, I beg your pardon. Next question. Weymouth Town Council has embraced technology in the last 12 months, using Zoom for meetings, a much greater use of social media. Do you think this should continue? And what further technological opportunities should the council pursue? And we're going to allow Nick to start on this one.
Yeah, thank you. So I haven't mentioned, but I work in IT. I work for Oracle. And I've worked from home for the last 21 years. And so I'm well used to things like Zoom. We had things like WebEx before that, Skype for business, those sort of things. And as a Dorset councillor, we found, since we were forced not to have physical meetings, because basically you couldn't under legislation, we've used Microsoft Teams and Zooms, and they're great. And one of the things it does is actually allows the public to engage far more with town council business, and that sort of thing. If you looked at any planning committee I've ever been to, you only get a couple of people turning up. You don't get the general public turning up. They don't listen. If you have Zoom, people can attend no matter where they are. They don't even have to be in this country. They can attend and they can engage. And I would like to see going forward, and put myself on the record, that virtual meetings should be allowed to continue, although government legislation is stopping that. it's a great advantage to councillors, it's a great advantage to the members of the public, and it puts democracy out there. Whereas, if it's in County Hall, if it's on the Weymouth Council offices, people don't attend. There are lots of other things we could do in terms of technology. There's lots of work going on in terms of technology in relation to people who have issues in terms of mobility, who are housebound. But that's more of a Dorset Council issue. They're providing lots of tech to monitor people, to keep people in their homes for as long as they possibly can. That's just one example of things that you can do. I'll run out of time.
Thank you, Nick. And over to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, simple word, I hate it. I do not, I embrace technology, fine. But unlike Nick, I haven't worked in it. I don't enjoy it. And I think face-to-face is a much better way of dealing with problems, dealing with any issues that occur. It's very easy to hide behind it. I mean, I don't like social platforms per se. I mean, Facebook, I would never be on. If that affects the way I do my work, well, that's unfortunate. I will never be on Facebook as long as I live. And I don't think people have lost the art of communication face to face. And I really don't think Zoom meetings are any help. Nick just mentioned about, the public being involved. Yes, please let the public be involved. We need to have the public being involved. We need their input. We need their ideas. But that doesn't mean it has to come through Zoom or any other medium. It can come by you going around personally and discussing these matters. And when it comes to council meetings, if they still want to be involved, then they could still join by Zoom if that's the way they want to, or by being, again, face to face. But I think from a point of view of talking to like Stuart and Nick and other councillors, if we're in the room together, you get a much better feeling of how things are going with each other. You get a much better idea than you do by something looking at a TV screen.
Thank you, John. And over to you, Stuart.
Well, actually, I believe I agree with both Nick and John. I don't particularly like Zoom, and I would prefer meetings to go back to across the table. But I can understand what Nick is saying, that people don't come along. And at the end of the day, you want as many people to be involved as possible. Therefore, I would go for a mix of both. Have Zoom available, but try and encourage people to come along to the meetings. And certainly the attendees, the actual councillors themselves, should be at the meeting and not on Zoom. In terms of social media, well, I'm all for communicating with people in any means possible. Like John, I don't like Facebook, I've come off it, but I am prepared to come back on Facebook and Twitter and things like that, because I think it's a way of communicating with people. Knock on doors by all means, it's the best way, but it's not the only way. And maybe you can, by having a good Facebook page, you can get in touch with more people on a more regular basis. So I would go for a mix of both. But I do long for the day when you have meetings face to face, I have to be honest.
Thank you, Stuart. I can't help but smile at the responses, because actually we as a church have been facing this very question ourselves. And mind you, parish councils had a great hit, didn't they, on Zoom last year? Okay, on to the next question. As candidates, what professional skills and experience could you bring to Weymouth Town Council? How could your experience benefit the town? And this time John kicks off with this one.
Okay, well, as I mentioned at the outset, my professional skills, if that's what they're to be called, I worked for an insurance company and arranging mortgages, insurances, etc., etc. And that was very much done face to face wherever possible. Clearly, obviously, this day and age, so much more is done on computers, and most people, I guess, arrange most of their financial deals, over the internet. But what that's left with me is an ability, I think, to meet people and discuss things on a much more sensible level. And that experience, I hope, is something that I can bring to bear, not only with fellow councillors in trying to persuade them one way or the other, but also with the general public in the form of listening. If you're in sales, one of the, when you go to sales meetings and you go to sales training, the very thing they forget to tell you, most important of all, is to listen. And as a counsellor, one thing that, is very, very important, and I get the impression by a lot of people I speak to that the counsellors they talk to don't listen, but I will listen. Can't always do everything that people want, obviously, we all know that. But, if you don't listen, you can't even find out and you can't even try. So yes, listening, I think, is the key that I've learned.
Okay, thank you, John. Stuart.
Okay, I'm tackling the question from what would I bring to Weymouth Town Council? And being a qualified chartered accountant, I hope I could bring some financial expertise. I've also been in general management as well for a number of years. And I understand that certainly financial expertise is something that is fairly in short supply at the council. At least that's what I've been told. Don't shout me down, but that's what I've been told. So I would hope that I could bring something there. I think the other thing that post-COVID is going to be very relevant is that we need to think quickly. We need to be innovative and bring in new ideas, bring in strategies that are going to work. And in general management terms, I've been involved with putting together strategies for a large number of years. And you need to do that, and you need to do it regularly as well and review where you're going. So I think I could bring in some general management expertise that would help with that. Really, what I'm saying is that I think I've got the experience that would help, and I'd be more than happy to help anyone on Weymouth Town Council, whatever party they represented, or even if they represented no party, were independent.
Thank you, Stuart. And okay, over to you, Nick.
Yeah, when I got elected in 2017, I think many people thought, what could he bring to the role? Because my background is computing. I did a software engineering degree, and I've worked in software engineering ever since. But I've worked in a development role, and I also work in a support role. I work in development, but it's when things like Amazon go down, there are people that I get called, and you have to deal with customers. And as it's been said by both Stuart and John, listening is the key, because listening tells you so much more than if you just go in there and have your own views. Listening is so crucial, and I've come to realize that over the past few years, and that's why I'm a successful politician. Because that's where I am. I am elected, and people keep electing me, and that is the key. And I've done leadership courses, I've done system analysis courses, I've done process courses, and all those things, of course, inform and are part of the background. And you use bits of them here and there. I don't have any financial background, I admit that at all. And what we have in David Gray on Weymouth Town Council is somebody who does. We don't need me to help him, and I've got lots of experience now of talking to people. Talking to people on the doors is the only way you find things out. And I've developed, my kids can't believe the amount I've changed in the past decade, from being somebody who would never talk to anybody to somebody who's more than willing to knock on the door to a complete stranger and ask them what their problems are.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. Question 9, which has come through from the wider public. Weymouth Town Council has 2 large projects, Tumbledown Farm and Radipole Park Drive. What benefits do you see those bringing to our town? And Stuart, it's your opportunity to go first.
Thank you. I must admit, I was quite surprised to hear that one of the things that Weymouth Town Council are responsible for is a farm. But what a great thing to be able to use, particularly for primary school children. And I would see that as a real benefit, just to bring kids, hopefully in a safe environment, nearer to the animals. In terms of Radipole Park Drive, it's a great achievement to get this grant. I think it's about $1.25 million. And one of the things that we really need to do, isn't it, is to lift the environment in Weymouth. I've lived in Weymouth long enough to remember when the main shopping centre was basically it looked like a bomb site, actually, because what happened was a developer came in to redevelop the site and then went bust. Where have we heard that before? But when Debenhams was built, it just, the environment improved and it just raised everyone's attitude to the town. And I think Redipole Park Drive, if it's done well, which I'm sure it will, that park will enhance people's lives in that area. And it's important that where we have these opportunities that we use them to the full.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Nick.
Yeah, so I'll go Redipole first. I think it's a great project. I've been involved in past and trying to reduce speed limits and things around the area. And Redipole Park Drive is an example of making an environment for the community rather than the motorist. It's an environmental benefit. It's got a local benefit, and I can't see how we can. I hope it succeeds. It also forms part of the Weymouth Wildlife Corridor, of course, as well, which we're trying to extend throughout the town. Preston is one end of it, but everywhere in between. We've got, bottom of Preston, the country park there is, it's a huge asset we've got, and we need to be making the most of it. Tumbledown it's an interesting one because it has multiple facets. It has the potential to generate income for the council, and then that's the intention. But of course, it also provides a massive facility for someone deprived, for SEN, for lots of people who for life, it's not great. It gives them an opportunity to get out and enjoy the local environment. And I know not just Lib Dem councillors, but many other councillors in Weymouth Town Council and on Dorset Council, like John Orell has done a huge amount in getting this up and running. And it's a great achievement, and it's to be applauded.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. And John.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate what Nick just said there, Nick, just said, because I know John Orell has had a very big hand in this, and the Tumbledown, that is. And I think it's a project that, is a credit to Weymouth Town Council, actually, because it will help so many, not just youngsters, actually, because some of the older people people will be involved in many ways. And if we can get people who have health problems, mental health problems, to be part of this as well. I know, as Nick said, there will be done as an income as well. Well, that's great. I mean, anything that's at least self-funding is better than nothing at all. But it is a project which I fully support, and I think it's something to be commended. Regarding Redipole, what an opportunity. I mean, it is a fabulous area anyway, as Nick said before, part of this sort of the wildlife corridor and so on. But we already have, tennis courts there, play areas there, and what a wonderful green space to walk through from the back of the Jubilee sidings. It's well kept, and I know that obviously town council are responsible for the parks and so on. One of the things that they have left, the Dorset Council has left us responsible for. And I think it's a wonderful area and can only be of a benefit to the town for our health and our well-being. I think it's a really good project.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thank you. Well, we're coming now to the final question, which is really about summing up your campaigns. Thank you very much to all three candidates for participating today. So you have 2 minutes to sum up why the residents of Preston should vote for you. And I'm going to ask Nick to address this question first.
Thank you, and thank you for the time today. So as I mentioned earlier, I invested in this area 20 odd years ago. I moved my family down here for a better life, for better education, for a better locale, and I don't regret a minute of it. And I'm passionate about Weymouth. Where I live in Osmondton, quite a lot of people are Dorchester centric. I'm one of the few who isn't. I'm a Weymouth person, always have been and always will be. And I can bring to Preston and Weymouth Town Councils the skills that I've demonstrated today and in my past service as a public servant since 2017. One of the things that used to really annoy me about Weymouth, before I got involved in politics, you'd read the Dorset Echo, and every year, every 2 years, the same things would come up like time and time and again, and yet there was never any solution. So we're talking about things about North Quay as a prime example, the peninsula, the amount of press that there's been about Peninsula, the amount of projects that have been, and nothing has ever come to fruition. And I think actually with going unitary, despite some of the disadvantages, it's given us an opportunity to break from the past and to move Weymouth forward. And I would really like to see North Quay developed in a way which, if it goes to plan, will provide housing with affordable housing on the bowling alley side. Peninsula, we're relying on people to develop that, but a hotel, new arts centre, somewhere where people can go when it's raining in Weymouth, because there isn't anywhere. Let's face it. We have a swimming pool which is built in the 70s, which is going to fall down. That is a huge priority for me as a swimmer. Somebody needs to replace that. It's run by Dorset Council, but if they take it away, what are we going to do with it? And I think as a member of Weymouth Town Council, with my links to Dorset Council, I can bring to the council that experience and that leverage and that influence, that members of the public in Preston will see that I'm out there doing what they want to do and representing them to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Nick. And over to you, John.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks to you, first of all, for chairing this meeting. It's been a very, hopefully, useful operation for us all. I did get involved in a Zoom meeting not too long ago with the Town Council regarding the local plan. And one of the things I'd like to draw attention to was, and again, this is in relationship to a better working relationship with Dorset Council. Item point 24.5.16, which I'm sure everyone will make a note of, is that the opportunity to declutter the quayside that pedestrianisation brings is significant. Now, it's things like that, you see, we have not been, that's never been up for discussion, that pedestrianisation. It was foisted upon us as an experiment last year, and I don't think a very successful one. The point being, what we need to do is have this much better working relationship with Dorset Council. And if I'm elected, then I can assure you, I am not afraid of asking sort of the big questions, and I'm certainly not afraid of saying why. So many things when I've been involved with meetings at various capacities and various levels over the years. And one of the things that you hear repeatedly is, oh, that's not how we do it. Oh, that's not covered by us. That's relating to other people. Well, my big question to all that is why? And can't we change it? So I can assure you, I will not be frightened of asking why. And, because if things are in Weymouth and they matter to the people of Weymouth, then they matter to me. And they matter, therefore, to the Town Council. And we should be representing them in that. I'll also obviously take great pride, hopefully, in trying to encourage other councillors to vote with their conscience and not because they're of a particular party. As I said at the start, and I mean it sincerely, party politics has no place in local authority.
Thank you, John. Thank you. And finally, but not least, Stuart.
Thank you. Maybe just picking up on that point that John's made, party politics have no part in local politics. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. And certainly the briefing I've been given by my fellow Labour people is that they expect me to vote independently. We don't have a whip as such for town council meetings, and it would be difficult to find any Labour policies on things like parks, gardens, allotments anyway. So, John is effectively not the only independent candidate, just to make that point. I live in Preston. I believe that I've got extensive experience in financial and general management, which I would bring to this post. I believe I'm creative and innovative, and that will be very much needed in the years that are going to follow these strange times that we live in. I'm honest. I hopefully bring integrity, wisdom, and composure as well. It's important that we sit down and look at things calmly. And I very much believe passionately that all people should be treated with respect and have a voice as well. So I will be endeavouring to communicate and get the opinions of the Preston population as much as possible. And I will give a commitment to do my best for all the people in Preston. I read something this morning that really I felt was appropriate, that knowledge only becomes relevant when it translates into action. And I like to think I'm a doer rather than a talker. And it's been interesting to see that I've probably been the only person who's finished questions within timescales regularly. So I will finish now with 10 seconds to spare. Thank you. And thanks, Nick, for organising today.
Okay. Thank you, Stuart. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to all the candidates, particularly those who have taken part today. And we wish you all the best for the final days of your campaigning.
Thank you.
I think at this stage, do I hand back to either Gary or Luke? Is that right?
Obviously not.
Obviously not. I don't think I've been briefed on how to round this up, but anyway, but many thanks to all the contributions that you've made, and it's been very much appreciated, and I wish you all the best. Okay, bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.